Am I the a-hole for not defending my cousin after he stole my baby name? I'm currently 31 weeks pregnant with my first child, a little girl. I've known for years what I want to name my child. The first name has sentimental meaning for me, and my husband and I chose the second name together. We've planned the name for years. When we were dating and talking about the future, one of the things we always said was that our firstborn would have this name. It's gender neutral, so it didn't matter if it was a girl or a boy. As soon as we found out I was pregnant, we started referring to the baby by name. Because we've had this name in mind for so many years, our whole family knows the name and the meaning behind it. We've already started decorating the nursery with little items that have the name or initials on them. There's basically been no question that this would be our child's name. My cousin's wife gave birth 2 weeks ago. They had refused to tell anyone what name or names they were thinking about during the pregnancy, which is fine. But the name that they ended up choosing is pretty much exactly the same as the name my husband and I chose for our baby. It's exactly the same first name and then an almost identical second name. It would be like if our baby's name was Mary Elizabeth, then the name they chose is Mary Eliza. The actual name isn't as traditional/common as that, so it really does stand out as being the same name. I was pretty upset when I found out, because they definitely knew the name we'd chosen, and it feels weird and kind of spiteful to use it. I know we don't own the name or anything, so we can't stop them from using it, but it still felt pretty icky. My husband and I basically decided to just be sort of privately weirded out, but to try our best to ignore it. I sent my cousin a text to tell him and his wife congrats on the baby, and then didn't reach out any further than that. I didn't say anything to him about the name. Well, it turns out that, even though my husband and I are trying to take the high road here, the rest of the family is pretty mad. Apparently, a bunch of them, including my cousin's mom, have reached out and told my cousin and his wife that what they did is really shitty and that they need to think about changing their baby's name. They've also reached out to me to say that they think it's awful and that they know how much meaning the name has for me. I absolutely didn't ask them to do this, but I can't pretend I'm not happy that people are taking our side. My cousin called me yesterday and said that I need to call all of our family and tell them to stop pressuring him about the name and that I'm fine with it because they are ruining his and his wife's time with their newborn. I have no intention of doing so because A, I didn't ask them to talk to him about it in the first place, and B, I'm not fine with it. I think it's weird that he and his wife did this, and I have no interest in defending him. Am I the a-hole? Wouldn't be the first game of baby name chicken I've heard of. One of my closest friends took my first choice girl name when he and his wife had a daughter and claimed ignorance after I reminded him. I told him I'm still going to use it, and he just shrugged it off. Name your kids the names you want regardless of whoever else steals them. Not the a-hole. Name that child the name you want, and let your cousins live with the name stealing reputation. I grew up in a family that is apparently bizarrely uncreative when it comes to names, because several of my similarly aged female cousins had the same name as me, and there are also 2 male names that were used multiple times for my male cousins. It's always a little baffling to me when people on Reddit act like it's such a horrible thing to have a shared name like that if you're related. I always actually kind of liked it. My cousins with the same name and I were affectionately referred to as the name gang, and I remember it feeling kind of like we were in a special club. That said, I also completely agree with you that Topi is not the a-hole. Their family apparently doesn't have the same tradition. They chose a unique name, and the cousin obviously knew the family wouldn't be cool with this. And it's okay to not be cool with it. Pretty ballsy of the cousin to ask the OP to defend him. Edit, and for the record, the female name and one of the male names were family names, but one of the male names was just a really popular one around the time my cousins were born. I'm the only cousin out of the 3 who had girls who did not name her daughter Margaret. It's not a family name, and the other 2 Margarets have different nicknames and are like 8 years apart. I admit it felt a little weird to buck the trend, but overall we don't spend much time around each other, and having my 2 cousins have daughters with the same name wasn't as weird as I would have expected. I will say, though, that I don't think it was this fraught when it happened, and they live in separate states. OP is not the a-hole for not engaging. It's not her job to enforce anything, and her cousin reaps what they sowed. Agreed. In the grand scheme of things, how often will cousin's child and OP's child be together? Birthdays, holidays, various family visits. It's not like they live in the same house and constant confusion will ensue their names. I sort of get that every prospective parent thinks they are choosing the absolute perfect name for their offspring and that said name should not be in the public domain, especially within the family, but that's not how life works. Eventually Mary Elizabeth will develop her own personality, as will Mary Eliza. As time goes on, none of the relatives would have noted the uniqueness of Mary Elizabeth's name, even if Mary Eliza had been given a different name. I know a guy from high school who has 2 older brothers, and they all have the same first name, Nan, which means human, person. Apparently his dad had always wanted to name his firstborn son Than Nan, Than being a middle name in Vietnamese, which roughly translates to grow into a good person. The guy loved the name, persuaded his wife and everything, and was determined to use it if they had a son. Turns out, his wife's first pregnancy brought him 2 sons, not 1. So now he was stuck. He couldn't imagine giving any of his sons a name other than Nan. So his solution was to give it to both of them, and simply attached different middle names. Several years later, my friend was born, also a boy. Like an old habit, his dad, once again, named him Nan. A fake. The 3 brothers are all called by nicknames at home. My friend doesn't seem to mind sharing his name with his brothers, though. He thinks it's funny that his dad sucked so bad at naming. Yes, not the a-hole. I have sworn to never tell anyone my picked out baby names, even though I may never even have children lol, but just in case, and luckily I learned the lesson in an easier way, I guess. I did have a baby name picked out years ago and told others, often talking about it, whenever name canvas came up randomly for a few years. My brother got a pet iguana, and named the iguana my baby name. And I know he got the idea from me talking about it, because the name isn't so common, and I was the only one to ever mention that name previously. I was furious, and of course, if I have a baby I'm not naming it now after an iguana, so that name's out. I've come up with others, since in my family, female family members anyway, get so mad when I won't tell them when they tell me names they like, but I won't budge, at least until I'm definitely too old to ever have kids. These posts happen so much and everyone says you don't own names. Everyone on this sub forgets that being allowed to do something doesn't mean you should. Especially because if you doing the thing will cause someone else to be unhappy. In a much tamer example, my friends and I all got the new Pokemon game recently, and one of them has not played since the first games came out. He got really excited about how he was going to breed Scorbunnies for all of our friends, so that they could complete their Pokedexes. As someone who has been into the competitive scene for years, I decided not to tell my friends that I already had a bunch of competition ready Scorbunnies for all of them, so that my friend could have his moment. Doing otherwise would have been an a-hole move, but this sub would give it a not the a-hole rating, because he doesn't own it, and you have no obligation to make him happy. I agree. Did they say why they picked that name? It is possible that cousin's wife had planned that name forever and just not told anyone, so they were on the horrible end of things to begin with. Your family definitely kind of seemed like the a-hole here, because of telling your cousin to change his child's name. That's crazy. You definitely don't have to apologize or whatever, but maybe discouraging your family from telling someone to change their newborn's name wouldn't be a bad thing. Just trying time provide another point of view here, because I had a baby name saved since I was young and didn't tell anyone, and guess what my friend's child is named? Lol. Everyone's the a-hole here. It's just a name. No one gets to own a name. There are plenty of families where cousins have same or similar names. I married a guy who has the same first name as my cousin. Nobody got mad. My sister-in-law gave her daughter the same first name I had picked out for the daughter I was carrying. The cousins are 30 years old, and it's just an amusing story now. This is way more drama than is needed over a name. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. See you all later.